All right. Whenever you are ready, sir, you can share your screen. We have the weakest link, the greatest opportunity, how coaching in esports redefines learning, leadership, and human development by Bret Chapman, Yorkville University. Looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, Dr. Jenny, and for Tobias as well, I am so grateful for the opportunity to kind of connect with everybody over the last several months and to learn on how to really bring a lot of my research to the surface.
Well, we're the group for you, Esports Research Network. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. You are good to go, sir.
Awesome. And now if I could just get my camera to actually kind of blur things out as they're supposed to, right? So as I've already said, thank you to the entire esports research community. I also want to kind of sit in this space where we are beginning to see esports coaching at a turning point. We are seeing programs that have been mirroring traditional sports athletics, chasing performance, but the next generation of athlete, we need to bring them into the system that serves them rather than the alternative. So, my name is Bret Chapman. I recently completed my Master's of Education at Yorkville University, and I'm very excited about my future steps moving towards a doctoral studies in educational leadership. So, it might surprise you a little bit to be here talking about esports, but I didn't really start as an esports person. I actually started as a father. As that father, I had my son sitting on my lap, pressing all the keys as we all got lost in Azeroth for over a decade. Video games were where we learned how to build friendships, how to have a sense of belonging, while learning to communicate in ways that, honestly, my generation never really needed to. The further that I stepped back from the keyboard, I began to watch my boys develop their own talents, becoming passionate gamers and young leaders who are reflecting their own strengths and purposes. But as I entered into esports, I recognized that not every player had the same formation. They didn't all have the same opportunities. Many learned the skills of gaming, but they didn't get connected to teamwork and what it meant to be in community. So when I began coaching, I realized the problem wasn't behavior, it was design. We've been expecting students to step into teams to function after years of isolated play and competition that somehow prepared them for a trusted, accountable, and caring community, but their isolation didn't align them to that. So now we have the system. This realization drew me into the idea that esports coaching and ultimately the research that I began to develop, I didn't see it as a lack of talent, but a lack of formation. We have academic programs that are being designed replicating professional esports environments. They're prioritizing tournaments and individual performance over their human development. Over the last 5 years, I've recently completed an undergrad in community support, which I then discovered this passion for educational philosophy, which had me pursue educational leadership at Yorkville University, and now moving very rapidly towards my doctoral studies. My research is focusing on creating holistic pathways for young gamers and esports athletes, reaching their full potential in their game while also being prepared for life beyond the game. So, this work has helped me see that video games and esports aren't really the problem. They are, in fact, the platform. They provide us a way to discuss human development, identity, and community in a language that this generation already understands. And that's how we have to have formative conversations about esports and coaching and the responsibility of human connection and growth as we continue to move forward. So where does their tension lie? When I stepped into esports coaching, I immediately saw the pattern. Our academic design was growing so quickly that these programs could be often described as the wild, wild west, with everyone thinking that they had the solution to a problem that, quite honestly, no one was really talking about. We were borrowing systems from traditional sports structures, which were designed for physical arenas, and trying to apply them to a digital environment that require entirely different forms of leadership and learning. As my research confirmed, most esports programs were never designed to develop individuals. They were simply established to build academic legitimacy, attract potential enrollment, and not even really foster student development. It could be often described as a wood chipper, is a term that I've used, where students were coming in and being pushed through the system without ever having a future in mind. In an attempt to be taken seriously, institutions are now seeking to adopt this traditional athletic model, including season schedules, competitive ladders, branding, and even sponsorships. However, in doing so, they're overlooking what makes the digital native athlete distinct, often having an uncommunicated expectation upon our athletes who don't even yet have the full skills on how to participate in a fair way. So this is where our shared tension is built. Metrics, which include wins, viewership, brand growth, are being used to evaluate athletes, where students are actually seeking meaning. They're seeking a sense of belonging, identity, and most importantly, psychological safety. Currently, these two systems of performance and formation are pulling against each other, and the athlete has been caught in the middle. In 2022, Formosa found that even the definition of esports itself is unstable because there really isn't a shared educational vision behind it. And our aforementioned host, Dr. Jenny and Dr. Wagner, they both have demonstrated that equating esports to traditional sports overlooks the social and developmental realities of a generation that has been raised entirely online. And in my research, I found Piazzo described our institutions operating in what could be essentially called an iron cage, a system driven by commercial pressure, where administrators are making design decisions based on budgets and branding rather than the human outcome. This has resulted in our programs often meeting external expectations, but failing at the human ones. Coaches are now becoming managers of performance rather than mentors of growth. Athletes are being asked to self-regulate inside a system that was never designed to support mental health or even identity formation. And this is where our greatest opportunity hinges. Yet, in this tension, the most significant opportunity is to be in the midst of the gap, to find a space for coaches to be in the middle of performance and purpose, in a role that becomes very transformational. Suppose we could redesign these systems to strike this balance of competitive integrity and psychological safety. In this case, esports could become a model for how institutions educate digital generation, not by copying the past, but being flexible and adaptive for the students that are emerging today. So now we have one of the most dynamic identifiable issues. In 2024, a new fascinating term coined by Kuluhu and Aknapar in 2023 described this phenomenon as digital schizophrenia, essentially a fragmentation of the human psyche that has begun to develop the player's performance persona versus their human identity. And this is a very dangerous lived experience, but one that most educators and classrooms and even community spaces are not being naturally designed to meet this need, this division that's happening generationally. This is not a clinical diagnosis. It's a sociological phenomenon that mirrors what we're seeing in our players every day. They're building a version of themselves on screen, high performing, confident, constantly visible, but then feeling increasingly disconnected from the quieter, less curated parts of who they are. This disconnection is not simply emotional, it's actually become developmental. Dr. Lisa and their colleagues in 2022 found that the pressure of continuous performance, visibility, and competition has created an emotional strain on student players that programs are just not meeting. They're not burning out because they're weak. Their burnout is more because their environments are demanding a constant output without a relational input. Our emergent athletes from Gen Z and Generation Alpha students, there's a dissonance that's even more sharp. They're craving psychological safety, real-time feedback, and more importantly, trust-based leadership. These are the spaces that are around them, academic, digital, and they're still being designed around perfection and comparison. The result? We have a generation trying to form an identity inside systems that reward attention more than authenticity. This is where coaching becomes essential. It's in these fragmented environments, coaches are often the only consistent human relationship players have. They can be the bridge in what Freire talks about in 1998, a long time ago, but the humanization, the process of restoring dialogue and reflection, and the care within learning systems and progress. When coaches slow down, listen before they instruct, and invite reflection, they help students rebuild their coherence between the digital and human self. This digital schizophrenia terminology, it's a technology. It isn't a technology problem. It's a design problem. If we recognize that identity is not fixed, but it's formed through relationship and reflection, coaching becomes one of the most powerful developmental tools we have access to. Every time a coach creates space for dialogue, there's helping stitch these two personas back together, where competition and performance have ultimately pulled us apart. So as I close, I'm not only a father, I'm now a grandfather. And this has even begun to help me see even beyond where my kids grew up, but now as a grandfather, watching my children raise their children. I ultimately wanted to help kids grow up through gaming. But now watching my own grandchildren, I'm thinking about what is the world that they will ultimately inherit? Is it one shaped by choices we make about technology, learning, and even community? Or is it an alternative? For me, this hasn't ever been really about esports coaching. It is about the human. It's about the human caught in the middle of it. It's a generational connectedness. Every decision we make as educators, leaders, and designers is going to have a ripple effect. The systems we build today will either isolate or integrate this emergent generation. That means we carry both a privilege and an immense responsibility to ensure that digital spaces form character, not just competition. As I've grown, my focus has shifted from being reactive to being aware, from looking forward to this overarching idea of what does it mean to see the whole system, both the flaws and the benefits. Are we looking forward, believing that transformation is still possible when care is part of that design system? This is the heart of my research. It's the reason why I'm here. When we connect generations, we align performance with purpose, and we view formation as the actual outcome of education. We don't just improve esports. We ultimately need to help shape the future of learning itself. As a grandfather, this gives me so much hope, knowing that if we get it right, we ultimately will prioritize connection, safety, and purpose. The next generation won't have to recover from the systems, but they'll actually be in a position to build the systems better, stronger, and more effective. I would love to connect with anybody that's here watching. I know I've burned through this, but I want to be able to address questions, thoughts, and ideas. Most importantly, in these last couple of minutes, please, ask questions. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you just click this QR code and you'll be able to find me quickly. Continue to reach out and ask more questions. There's so much more to this conversation.
Thanks so much, Bret. Did you want me to post the questions in the chat, or do you want me to read them to you?
If you could read them, it'll help my brain kind of process a little bit more in real time.
Great. So the first question is, how do you define digital schizophrenia?
What we're seeing is in the classroom, students are choosing their digital avatar. And so let's use League of Legends as a great example. The child or the youth who's playing in a top lane scenario kind of becomes an island unto themselves. But not only are they now then isolating from the rest of the classroom, but if you look across all of the different avatars that exist, a child could choose any one of those to then be the external expression of who they are, whether it's Valorant, League of Legends, World of Warcraft. Any of these digital immersive experiences is where we're seeing children and youth choose these avatars to explain their history, to explain the story of life that they're living in. Again, not a clinical diagnosis. It's a sociological phenomenon.
Thank you. Next question is from Overlord K. One of the challenges of individual growth is how to measure growth on a standard scale. When compared to easier to measure metrics like win rates, KPIs in games, how can schools measure individual growth to measure effectiveness of this approach?
I think that what we have right there is the essence of everything that we're struggling with right now. We are looking for the same challenge that generation is currently facing with immediacy. We're looking to define the answer so quickly that we've lost the longevity of the view. I don't think it is a fair assessment to judge the human formation in the same way of KPIs or win rates or any of the internalized constructs. We need to take a much longer view of what is human formation. I don't think that we need to let go of win rates. That's not, or the performance side of coaching. It's when we integrate the connection and the community focus is where the athletes win. I think we often forget that, especially in collegiate spaces, the game component will end, and it's going to end relatively quickly. Who are these students beyond their collegiate experience? How are they reintegrating into the world around them? Even our professional athletes, we're seeing 22 and 23-year-old athletes that are not operating at a typical 22 or 23-year-old age bracket. And so how are we building into the future is how I would kind of address that as a core thought.
Next question is from NRHEA95. How can coaches overcome the outcome-focused or ego-oriented feedback loops that competitive games are designed to create?
Whew. Again, questions are knocking it out of the park. I think the biggest element is when we integrate authentic, genuine human psychology and human development into the coaching side. And I think part of the big struggles is we don't actually have systems where esports coaches are being developed. We don't have academic we have esports business management, but we don't have esports coaching development. I would love to see some schools take on the challenge of developing the psychology of esports and what does it mean to be in that space in its very essence. I think that when we can merge or bridge the avatar to the human experience, eliminating this separation or this the fragmentation of it all, this is where both the athlete, the program, the coaches, everyone kind of synergizes together in the middle. And this is where we see that genuine outcome that we're looking for. Does that answer that question, Dr. Jenny?
Well, maybe the person who asked that can respond in the chat and we'll see what they say. Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned about the lack of formalized coaching education programs. I know that NACAD, National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors, they are piloting a level 1 coaching certificate at the moment right now, and they're starting to roll that out. So I don't know what's in that curriculum. It'll be interesting to see how that finishes out. So I have a question myself. My master's degree is in coaching, and so I'm always interested in coaching philosophies and leadership styles. And I'm interested in your experience. I see a continuum of a humanistic coach where they involve the athlete in decision making, and then the other side of the continuum, a very autocratic. They're going to tell them everything, and they don't want the athletes to make any decisions because they feel they know exactly what needs to be done. Where do you see esports falling into those two different philosophies, and how might the level or experience of the athlete impact the approach that you might take?
I find that there is the often misplaced view of what a holistic coach might look like, in that there are times in seasons where autocraticism is necessary. A player needs to play according to what the team and the coach has developed. But I think that as we break out the training and development of an athlete, finding developmental, democratic, holistic, where everything is being brought together, I think that ultimately for the athlete development, having a genuine space where they are trusted to be who they are as humans through the lens of that avatar. And I think that coaches have struggled in that adaptation. We've seen it even in traditional sports, football, hockey, and that the old school coach is not getting the same quality of outcome from their athletes that they did 10 or 15 years ago. So the athlete has changed as well. And I think in esports particular, the amount of self-coaching that has taken place has shifted how the athlete sees the coach. The coach is no longer the respected role. When you step into the room, everyone's going, I'm here to learn. When most esports athletes are already much, much better than the coach might even have ever been. And so the philosophy that I try to adopt is this holistic space. Relational accountability is what we reference it as in my program, in that we're trying to bring everybody onto this adaptive, formative space where we are all kind of learning together.
And we, the NRHEA95, you asked if that was an adequate response. They said, love it, with a thumbs up. So I would say yes.
Sometimes my brain just gets ahead of what I'm trying to talk about and I get lost, but no,
yeah.
I'm so grateful.
So I'll ask you another question. A lot of discussion on AI tools for coaching. Where do you see their use? Where do you think that they would be effective? Where do you think that they maybe shouldn't be? What are your thoughts on AI tools for coaching?
Well, as I'm a prolific AI participant in numerous hours every day, breaking down research, understanding, asking questions, kind of reflecting it upon myself, I don't think there's a space for coaches to replace the team or relational connection. I do think, though, that AI is very prolific in helping coaches understand maps, meta, changes, transformation, but even also being able to become a forever learner, to be able to take research and take a 35-page paper and really begin to wrestle with what's happening in the philosophy side, the theoretical side, and even the tactical side of education. There is so much great and amazing research that's coming out right now. I'm seeing it in our Discord channel all the time. There are new papers that people are releasing, which are blowing my mind. And it's so exciting, but how could I possibly keep up if I tried to read everything and maintain this level of and commitment to my coaching prowess and what I'm trying to bring to my players, to my athletes? So I think there is a great place for AI, but I don't think it ever can replace that human connection and where it sits between the coach, athlete, and even the coach and the academic environment.
Oh, a new question from Smoothman XAN. What is the most helpful resource or support structure that can be given to a coach from a higher management position, in your opinion? And you have about 3 minutes.
Ooh, okay. So higher management position. What is the number one thing that we can really bring to our coaches? I think that it's ensuring that our coaches have the space to learn, that they're not being judged so quickly by the wins and the loss or by performance, in the same way that we are asking that we do not address that with our players. We want time for our coaches to be in this relational connectedness to the players, to the system, to the program, but also into this academic space and environment. If our coaches are going to continue to learn, we really need to make sure that space exists. And I think that listening to our coaches and what they're experiencing and how they are interpreting becomes this adaptive and very flexible style of leadership that our academic environments have struggled with in the past, but genuinely need to move towards in order to continue to move and transform the system that we have ultimately inherited.
All right, Grandpa Chapman, appreciate your appreciate your insight. Any final thoughts? We got 1 minute for the next presenter.
I have been overwhelmed all day watching the presentations and listening in. It has just been such a dyadic presentation where there's so many different areas that we're bringing into esports and development. It's been amazing. I am not only excited for the rest of this, but even for 2026 and what's happening, what's already being established and built out. This is a space where new voices are have an opportunity to be heard. I never ever would have considered this a year ago. I'm just so excited. So it's been great. Thank you, Dr. Jenny and Tobias, for really spearheading all of this year and getting everything on the go. I am really excited about being part of the ongoing community.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate that you submitted and that you gave an awesome presentation. And